Seconds. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Stigma-Free Society Wellness Chats with Nisha. It's a new year. It's a new time, and we're excited to have everyone back with us. Welcome. I wanted to talk a bit about, this Facebook Live event, and that I'm representing the Stigma-Free Society. It's a Canadian registered charity, and it aims to reduce the stigma of all kinds. And it's really all about having the focus on mental health. And we want to promote mental wellness education for youth while providing resources for educators, school counselors, parents, and guardians. The Society's goal is really to create awareness of the various stigmas that exist in the world, and then develop an understanding of these challenges that numerous people face and encourage people to foster an acceptance of themselves and of others. So if you want to learn more about the Stigma-Free Society, please join us at www.stigmafreesociety.com. Okay, well, today we have an amazing guest who I would love to introduce. I'm going to just bring you up. Hello, Dr. Rachel Worth-Cappell. Did I pronounce that correct?
Cappell.
Cappell. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So Dr. Rachel Worth-Cappell. So this is the point where I'm going to do a little intro of you, so you get to listen to all that exciting stuff.
Ooh.
So Dr. Rachel Worth-Cappell is a Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine and based in Victoria, BC. She has her BA in Philosophy from the College of Wooster, a Doctor of Naturopathy degree from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. She's a Wilderness Whitewater Canoe Guide and a Wilderness First Responder Instructor through Wilderness Medical Associates. Very cool. I can't wait to hear more about that. So interesting. So Dr. Worth-Cappell has expertise in the clinical application of nutrition, acupuncture, herbal medicine, physical medicine, naturopathic counseling, and nature-based therapy. Now that is a beautiful combination. And so through these modalities, she aims to amplify the body's innate healing capacity, as well as reconnect her patients to the awesome healing powers of nature. And her appointments, they're thoughtful. She chooses appropriate tools to gently guide you back into your state of health and the right relationship with the natural world. So welcome, Dr. Rachel Worth-Cappell.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a mouthful.
I know. Well, it's a good mouthful, though. There's lots of beautiful words in there and lots of positive movements and things that are happening. So maybe you could tell us a bit about yourself and how did you come to be, kind of like a bit about your journey to how you ended up to where you are today.
Sure. It's been a long road. So I studied philosophy and thought I was going to be an environmental lawyer for a long time. And then I realized that I loved being outside and that being a lawyer.
Lawyers don't really hang out outside a lot.
Not really doing a lot of work outside. So I decided to go into outdoor education, which was like it felt really different at the time. Like it was unrelated from philosophy. But I mean, in many ways, philosophy sort of taught me how to think and how to learn and how to be critical and analyze things. And I applied that in the outdoor industry. So my first real job, which I did for 5 years full time, was in the Ottawa Valley in Ontario. And I worked with people living with mental illness, unhoused people, people with acquired brain injuries, and then racialized youth that were coming from like the Jane and Finch area in Toronto that had never been outside. And we would take them on canoe trips. And in the wintertime, we would do snowshoeing and cross-country skiing and all kinds of outdoor-based activities. So that was really, really special. And I saw people would come up who were schizophrenic or bipolar and were really struggling with their mental health. And, in 5 days, they were in community with people that loved and cared about them, and they were communing with nature, and they were physically active, and they had, like a roof over their head, which they didn't always have in Toronto. They had regular food. And so just in 5 days, the amount of change that we would see in their well-being was incredible. And these were people that had been in institutions or involved in any sort of mental health system for most of their life. And then 5 days, they saw a huge shift.
Wow.
So that felt like something about our system wasn't serving people. And then I just happened to meet someone who was a naturopathic doctor, and they made it seem really cool. And I loved working with herbs already. I was already really into foraging and being in nature in that way. So it just sort of felt like it went hand in hand. And then I had to go back and do a bunch of prereqs because it turns out philosophy isn't very there's not a lot of science in philosophy. So I had to do all my prereqs. So I did that for 2 years, and then I went back to school for 4. So it's been a long road. It's been since I was like 21, and I'm 32 now.
That's amazing. So I love that because my background is also a career counselor. So I feel that, I say, if you have a goal and there's something you really are passionate about, everything's achievable. You just take it one step at a time, right? Like you could have looked and said, I'm overwhelmed. I can't achieve, like, I've got to get all my science stuff. I can't do it, but you did it. You're like, I'm in because why? What was it about it that was calling you?
Yeah, I think I just, again, really saw that people weren't being served by for me, it was the mental health aspect. I worked with a lot of people with mental health, and my job was I would look at the med forms, and if anything happened on trip, I was sort of like the medical supervisor. And I just saw this like laundry list of medications that people were on. And oftentimes, it was like their original drug that they were on caused so many side effects that they had to go on other drugs. So there's so much, we call it polypharmacy. So just like multiple drugs that made people feel really unwell. And so I really felt like at least some part of this could be addressed in a different way.
Oh, that's really so beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. And to those watching out there, like, also know that there are alternative approaches or ways to maybe not be on so much if it's not suiting you, if it's not working, there's other ways to look at it, right? So like, tell us maybe about your approach to naturopathic medicine with your clients. I saw on your website, which is really beautifully written, it talks about the 4 fundamental beliefs, and it talks about disease being like dis-ease, like really cool. Maybe tell us a bit about all that.
Yeah. I actually had to, because I had to look at them. I was like, what are my, what were the things that I said? And they are really beautiful.
They are beautiful.
But yeah, so I think coming from a background of being an outdoor educator, like nature is the most powerful healer. And I saw that time and time and time again and again, like none of this is to discredit the Western medical institution or naturopathic medicine or any modality that people choose. For me and from my experience, so I'm only speaking from my lived experience, that nature has been incredibly powerful for both myself and all of the people that I've worked with. And I think there's like no fluff, like when you get out in nature, you just recognize like what exists fundamentally for you and what is really important. And so you can kind of like strip away all the extra. Sometimes we're like in cities or in community and we get confused about what's really important. And when you get out into nature, you're like, okay, fire, water, shelter, food, community. That's pretty much the only thing that matters. So that's like really impactful. And then just even like, I'm sure we all have different lived experiences with being outside, but any of us sit outside for a moment and like our nervous system is like, okay. Yeah.
Even thinking about it, I start to feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like really cool studies. I worked in a lab when I was at Dalhousie doing my prerequisites, and they had people sitting in front of just computers looking at pictures. And their cortisol levels, which is like our stress hormone, those dropped just even looking at a screen, not even being out in nature. So this isn't like in any way new technology that like the Western world has discovered. Like people have known this since the beginning of time. But So yeah, that's like the first thing that that guides the way that I practice is I try to get people out in nature as much as possible through workshops that I facilitate or just like nature prescriptions. I write.
A nature prescription? Tell me about that. It sounds amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when you look at a prescription, it's like dosage. So like how much are you taking and how often are you taking it? So I think about like, I will ask people where they feel the most at ease in nature. And I think a lot of us, like for me, I'm a river person or like a water person, like being next to running fresh water is really important to me. Some people really connect with the ocean. Some people really connect with like mountains. Some people love trees. Some people love rolling hills. You know, there's like so many different places in nature. And so I tell people to like find that spot and sit there for 15 minutes or take 20 breaths in that place or, you know, whatever feels appropriate for that person. But that's like the first thing that I try to do for people.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's such a simple thing to do, yet we forget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Where's your place?
My favorite, I was just picturing it. I love to be anywhere by the water. I love to be like, whether it be like a lake or an ocean, or it's probably even a puddle would do, you know, like I'm just happy by the water. If I can see some water and throwing mountains, so throwing trees, cool. But like, I just like that. It makes me start feeling grounded and open and free. I'm just happy. And it's rejuvenating, you know.
And there's so many like analogies that you can think of when you work with water. It's like you are like you can like imagine your stress and like if you're swimming, you just like you're imagining it like flowing off of you, or you're like standing in a river and you can imagine like the river's like washing your feet of the stress or like the tension. There's a lot of like visualizations and metaphors that you can use with water, with any element really. But yeah, I also love water.
Oh, I love it. Whenever I can, I just take a bath. If I can't get to water, I'll just take a bath, and it feels pretty awesome.
And I think that's a really important thing because like I live in Victoria. I lived in Toronto for 4 years. I think, are you in Vancouver?
I'm in Vancouver, yes.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, a lot of us are city based, and that's sort of how urbanization has moved us out of rural spaces. But that is still really like nature is everywhere.
It is.
And it's like I'm looking outside my window and there's a beautiful oak tree, which is like so old and wise looking, and there's birds and I can watch them and I'm still connected. So I don't have to be, I mean, I love being in like super remote locations, but you don't have to be.
Yeah, it could be, there's nature everywhere.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's like part of how I practice. And then like, do you want me to go through the other
whatever you would like to talk about, if any of them kind of like, if there's maybe like one that kind of moves you, another one?
I think like naturopathic doctors will often talk about treating the whole person. And I think that's really important, where we're not just treating the physical body or just treating the mental body or just treating the emotional. So I think that's really important. And I'm happy to talk about that. But the thing that really sticks out to me when I look at the principles that guide me is that we heal ourselves. And which might sound a little bit counter when I say like nature is the greatest healer. I think there's like a co-relationship there that can happen.
It's that connection.
So, yeah. And I think a lot of the times, like we are a society of seekers where we're looking for someone to fix us or heal us. And I totally relate to that. Like I do the same thing. And time and again, I'm struck by the fact that like I am super wise about myself. Like I'm my own expert. And that I'm really just facilitating, as a naturopathic doctor, I'm facilitating people to heal themselves. I'm not waving a magic wand. I'm not giving them a magic pill. The work really is required by the people that show up to my office. I can't do that work for them. And our bodies are really wise and they will do what they need to do. And we're just, you know, sort of removing barriers to health more than anything so that our bodies can heal.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I love that. I fully agree that, especially in this last year, I really reflected on always searching for like, what's going to make me feel better? What's going to make me feel better? How am I going to like pull out of depression? How am I going to feel more alive? And really, I looked internally this last year because we've been in lockdown. Where am I going to look? I looked internally, and that's where I found my healing was within me. And I fully resonate with what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so much within us and we might not believe, but we are our own healers. I love that you said that.
Mm-hmm. And I think my teacher and naturopathic doctor said, she's like, this is the medicine of 2020 is sort of, you can't escape.
Yes.
You can't, which is like both a blessing and a curse because, you know, I'm not trying to take away that it was a challenging year. And also you really get to look at like, do I like my habits? Do I like my routines? Do I like where I live? Do I like my partner? Do I like my job?
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of those. There was a lot of introspection.
So much.
Yeah.
And so it's beautiful to like be able to look inside, but also to work with someone who can guide you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who can guide you along, like what to maybe think about, what to look at, what to, you know, so I had my healers helping me. And so maybe you can even tell us, because another big part of healing is mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot, you know, happening, I'm sure, with everyone's mental health over this last year, even more so than normal, because like you said, we can't run from it. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe tell us a bit about that in your practice.
Mm-hmm. When I was in school, we do a 1-year internship. So we have patients and then we have a supervisor that comes in with us. So one of the shifts that I was on was the mental health focus shift because I was really passionate about working with people on their mental health. And the thing that was really interesting was that it wasn't that much different than the other shifts that I was on. So, except for people knew that they were coming in to talk about their mental health, but otherwise, like I see that we're all on the spectrum, and that we're all like, I think in some way we're all struggling. We can all struggle with mental health. And so when people come into my practice, that's a big part of what we talk about. I don't try to be a counselor, but I do always try to make that connection that, for example, I use this example a lot, but low back pain and depression often go hand in hand.
Wow.
And it could be that someone gets depressed and they feel less motivated to be active. And so we're sitting a little bit more and then our muscles tighten and we have low back pain. Or you've had an injury and you can't do the things that you want to do and then you get depressed. So, I mean, there's a feedback loop there. But I always try to make that connection because I think in our Western world, we have really falsely separated mind, body, spirit, and they're all the same. Yeah. So, and I think that's a big part of how I practice is just even bringing awareness to the connection to those things.
It's amazing because I think you're right that people maybe separate those things and don't think of them as connected as they are. And that's great. You can bring so much awareness to people, right? And once you're aware, then you can make changes. So maybe you could do a definition of wellness for us, but then also tie it into like, how do you practice wellness in your own life? And maybe even specifically mental wellness.
So that's a hard question. And the things so one of my friends ran a workshop. All of my stories are very nested in like so many layers.
Great.
So I hope you'll be patient. I'll get to your answer.
No, I love your stories.
So one of my friends runs a workshop that basically looked at like, what is a good death? And this was all in light of Black Lives Matter and just like the conversation around racism and death. And essentially the answer, he like posed that question and it was sort of a group forum. And the answer that came up was like, having autonomy over the way that you die is a good death. So
Wow.
being able to choose like how, maybe not when, that's, none of us can choose that, but what that would look like, that's what a good death is. And I think that that's also a good life and what wellness is. So when I think about wellness, it's autonomy of choice on how you want to, like what you want to do, how you want to take care of yourself, what things feel like, noticing what things feel really good for you and your body, not being told what you should be doing. So there's like the physical aspect of autonomy. I think wellness is being free from oppression. So looking at like a communal or a community approach. And so just like being able to be safe in your own skin, regardless of your skin color, your ethnicity, your gender, your sexual orientation, your religion, just free from oppression. And then I also think joy is like so important to wellness. And I think that's like just having things that fill you up and fill your well with joy. And it's like that feeling that comes from your heart. I hope that we can all, people that are tuning in, can connect with that feeling somewhere. Maybe it's not today, but you can call to mind a memory that brings you joy. I think that joy is like essential to wellness.
Yes.
And experiencing it as much as you can.
It's a really good point in that, and then reminding ourselves that we are responsible for our own joy. Like we bring moments of joy in our life by even being aware of what brings us joy. Is it that water moment? Is it, holding a flower? Is it taking a bath? Is it being in a warm blanket? Like those little things, I think, we have to remind ourselves and put ourselves in those moments.
Yeah. And we can't feel joy all the time. And so maybe there's like contentedness that's also a part of it, where it's like, maybe you can't always feel joy, but there's contentment with having, my friend was like, you're always looking for a 10 out of 10, but be content with the 7, like learn to celebrate the 7 out of 10, because that's like what most of what life is. Like we're not really living 10 out of 10, even though, your Instagram feed or your Facebook feed is probably telling you otherwise, that everyone's living these 10 out of 10, even in a pandemic. Like what's that about? But learning how to celebrate the 7 out of 10. So there's like there's the physical component of like the absence of disease is amazing. And I think that even when you live with maybe it's chronic mental illness or chronic physical disease, that you can still be well. And I think that our wellness world has been really exclusionary of people that aren't like free from disease, but I think that we can all be well.
It's a great thing to reflect on, that we can all be well, and that well doesn't mean perfect.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's been a really important conversation that's come up in the health and wellness industry in the last, I even hate the term industry, but like the world of health and wellness in the last, year, is that we've been quite exclusionary, and there's been a lot of ableism and racism and classism that is inherent in that. And so, just like trying to open up wellness, the definition of wellness, to be much more inclusive.
It's a great definition. And so, how do you think like the holistic treatment that you offer, how does it differ from other treatments out there? And also like, what are the benefits of using naturopathic herbal approaches?
So naturopaths have the benefit of having time with people. And I think that, so my initial intakes are 90 minutes. So when you go to your MD, and to no fault of theirs, it's, a 10, 15-minute visit because they're stacked and there's not enough MDs. So there's just not enough time in their schedule. But we're so complex. There's so much to know, and to remember that it's all connected really requires time and space to explore the facets of you. So in my 90-minute visits, I go through family history. So like any sort of genetic predisposition that you might have, which includes, I think, intergenerational trauma. So there's like the mental emotional piece that I think can get passed down. And we'll go through your like past medical history, any hospitalizations, any symptoms that you think are like, oh, that's like weird and probably totally unrelated. Like that's the stuff that I want to know about. So that really takes a long time. And so we get to develop that rapport and relationship, which is really special. And then in terms of treatments, it's so individualized. And I think that that's a real benefit as well to naturopathic medicine, is that I'm never going, there might be two patients coming with the exact same thing, and I'm probably not going to give them the same treatment plans because you are a beautiful, unique snowflake who requires something different. So I often will look at the pillars of health. So that's sleep, diet, exercise, and mental wellness. And again, not to say that they're separate, but really try to make sure that those foundations are solid. So those are pretty much like the beginning, the intro to like getting people on a treatment plan, is making sure that those are solid. And that really depends on the person walking into the door. So yeah.
Sometimes people underestimate the power of sleep.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. And how much technology can impact sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because of like having that blue light on your face just before going to sleep disrupts your sleep, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Even having things I've heard plugged in near you.
Yeah. I mean, some people I think are a lot more sensitive than others to that kind of thing. But for sure, the blue light can impact your circadian rhythm. Yeah, and having like any sort of light in your room can impact it. So
yeah, with my eye mask on, it just helps. I think everything that we can do, but then it's great talking to someone like you because you would help point out those things that we might not have thought about. And in getting to wellness, healing is part of this. Healing is a big part. And so maybe you can talk about, what does healing mean to you in your practice? And is healing something that everyone needs?
I think healing and wellness go hand in hand. So I think healing is feeling empowered in your body. I think healing is feeling well. I think healing is having autonomy to make choice and trusting that your choice is the right one, trusting yourself. I think it is, feeling as little physical discomfort as possible. And I also think, it depends on how deep you want to go with the healing, right? Because I think, again, from my perspective, I think intergenerational trauma is a real thing. And so even if maybe you feel like on your level, you're like, I'm good. Usually when you start going back into the story of your ancestors, there's some healing work that can be done. And that's, it's important to balance feeling contentment with where you're at and also doing the work to, heal your line, like your ancestral line, and feel like you understand where you come from so that when you're here in this present moment, you can be a grounded healing force for people in your community. So I think we all have healing work that we can do. And I also want to balance that with feeling content with the person that you are and knowing that you're also like enough and that you don't need to change at all. Yeah.
That's a great point. that you are good as you are.
Yeah,
Everything else is a bonus.
totally.
It's interesting that you talk about the ancestral things. Do you think that people need to know the stories of their ancestors in order to heal?
I think that it can be really helpful. And I also think that all in good time, sometimes I think that, and something you said before we went live, you're like, the things that come out are what needs to be said. And I think sometimes those stories can be kind of like shrouded and like, we don't know about them because of time. But I think the things that need to come out when you're ready to receive that.
Mm.
So I think that knowing the stories can be really important. And for myself, like I'm of mixed European ancestry, and so have been implicit in a lot of like racism that's existed for hundreds of years. And so for me, it's really important to know the stories of my ancestors so that I can heal and do work as an ally in my community.
Wow.
So I think it really depends on the person and how resourced you feel. Like, are you ready to hear those stories? Because some of them can be really impactful and activating for your nervous system, and painful. So just feeling, not just like digging into it, but checking in with yourself and making sure that you're resourced to hear those stories.
Right. To manage them, to go through them.
Yeah.
And then with the healing, that's so, like you were saying earlier, that it's connected like mind, body, soul. So what would you say is the role of mental health in healing? Why is it important to have that connection awareness?
I think it's everything.
Yeah.
I think that, I think that mental health impacts everything that we do. It impacts our physical body, it impacts our emotions, it impacts our spirit. However you think about spirituality, I think that, and it's really labile, like it can change from day to day, but when you get to know yourself and the like mental part of yourself, you can start to step back and become an observer, as much as you can, wherever you're coming from. And then maybe you can't change your mental health that day. You can try to wish it away, whatever you're experiencing. But at least stepping into the role of observer and recognizing where you're at can really make a big difference in all of the other parts of yourself. So
it's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So powerful. I think that if we can like take that step back and just even like look at ourselves, look within ourselves, and just say like, okay, I just reacted to that, or I just wanted that. I think I know why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that I don't have to keep going down that path, or like it's that talking to self about, what did I just experience? What did I just feel? Have I felt this before? Is this familiar? Am I choosing this because it is familiar?
Yes. Yeah. And you may recognize that and still choose to walk that path a bajillion more times.
Yeah.
Like,
just
totally guilty
of
doing that.
Yeah, like that too, and don't feel guilty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But it is nice to, as you said, like to recognize it's a well-worn path, or start recognizing where that comes from. And I think that's where the ancestral piece comes in too. It's like, it doesn't even have to be like distant, it could be like my parents, my sisters, like, oh, that's where that comes from. And then you can start to have compassion for yourself and recognize like, oh, that's the like hurt part of myself that came from like, that's like 5-year-old Rachel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe when you see it in others, you might recognize that's the hurt part in them as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have compassion for them.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah. And I think that really does start with compassion, starts with yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That self-love,
Mm-hmm.
self-understanding can lead to self-healing.
Yes. I absolutely agree with that.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. Dr. Rachel Worth-Cappell, Capel? Capel.
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 It's apple with a K. That's what I always say.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a good
I'll
one. So Dr. Worth-Cappell, and thank you. I just feel like this is just such a beautiful, deep conversation. I actually could go on for an hour with you, if not more. It's just so powerful. And I think that it's so valuable, you know, for people to see all the facets of healing and wellness and what we can do, and that there are people like you to, you know, work with and to do beautiful work with. And it could be an amazing experience, you know, of positivity. And so before we go, if there's anything else you'd like to add to anyone watching or listening, that any messages you'd like to share?
I mean, I think that you're on the path.
Yeah.
Like kind of, again, what you were saying, like you're doing the right thing. It may not always feel like you're doing it. And maybe I'm saying this because I need to hear it too.
Yeah.
I like often need to hear this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you're here, you're on the path.
And I feel that you're definitely on the right path. This is whatever energy you're putting out about this, it's powerful and it's meaningful. And I already feel healing just from this conversation. So I want to say thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
How can people learn more about your work and if they wanted to contact or connect with you? And I'm guessing you do online work as well for people who might not be in Victoria?
Yeah.
Even people in Victoria might be online. I don't know.
Totally. I mean, with COVID, we've sort of always made telehealth accessible. I'm licensed in British Columbia as a naturopathic doctor, so I can't work with people as a naturopath outside of BC. But there's lots of other work that we can do online if you're outside of British Columbia. My office is in Victoria, BC on Oak Bay Avenue, so I'm like right in the heart.
Beautiful.
And I teach at Pacific Rim College. I'll be teaching a foraging course in February. I also lead dream circles. So that's also been a really big part of my work, is helping people to understand the wisdom that comes from our dreams.
Wow. Love that.
So yeah, you can check me out. My website is sacredgrovenaturopathic.com. And I have all my offerings up there, and you can, you know, just reach out if you have questions or anything. I love connecting with people. So
amazing. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day, everyone. Thank you for being with us, and wishing you much wellness and much healing. Love everyone.
Yeah.